welcome back to another video. In this video, I wanted to talk about something called individuality and identity. So let us understand the difference between individuality and identity. An identity is something that is not uh, close to your individuality. Individuality is what you are when you are alone, when you are doing that one thing that is not to show someone, that is not to that is not to be like someone. So Rene Girard, in his mimetic theory, says that there are two types of desires. There are the desires that we naturally have, the physical desires, and then there are the desires that are the metaphysical desires, the desire to be like someone. So our whole lives are bent upon these metaphysical desires. When our natural desires are fulfilled, we try to be like someone and we try to see how it is like to be that person. So, this desire is something that is based upon the identity, it is not based upon the individuality. There is one act you may have known that you do without the need for identity, but most of our desires are based on identity. So, let us now understand what an identity is. Identity is something that you use to communicate with others. So when you are with someone or when you interact with someone, what you use is an identity. It is closely related to the individuality, but sometimes these identity can be completely false and based on the circumstances that you are meeting with this person. And you will have this realization that an identity usually evolves. So if you introduce yourself to someone that you want to have a good connection with, or when you like someone and you want to have a good connection with them, and you introduce to them as a certain identity. For example, if you introduce to them as a writer or as a software developer, you tend to develop this identity over time. To have more connection with this person, you tend to develop this identity. So that is why in social interactions, it is very important to have a good connection, and that first interaction is very important. And that is why we all are subconsciously building this identity with the person. So our communications with others and our social interactions are very, very valuable because our identities and what we become in future uh, largely are dependent on this evolution of identity. It is not. It is not that this identity is wrong. It is good to have different identities, and it is good to have uh, the more identities you have, the more experiences you have with people, the more you are able to use these identities. A larger knowledge is required to actually be able to use your identities to develop your individuality. So every interaction that you have with people should be uh, in this awareness that you are developing an identity. That way, you are constantly uh, aware of what you are speaking and of what you are doing with these people. These are not false. Uh, it's important to understand that all identities are false in some way. The way you behave with your parents may be completely different than the way you behave with your girlfriend, and the way you even perceive yourself as when you are with your girlfriend is completely different from the way you perceive yourself when you are with your parents. This is due to an identity. All identities are false. They are mere projections of the individuality. The individuality grows when you do that one act that is your own individual, and every other act or every other uh, action that is based on this metaphysical desire is leading you towards building an identity. So, all identities are false, and we always are creating these false identities all the time whenever we are interacting with a new person, or even when you are interacting with the, the older relationships. You are constantly changing this identity, and this identity is being molded as the impressions that are formed on this identity are changing. Now, being aware of how this identity is developing is very important, because an identity grows mechanically. That is, sometimes your uh, identity can grow in a very evil manner, and you will end up being an evil person. But it is not necessarily the individual's fault, it is the fault of the identity, and it's fault of the circumstances that you were in. Now, these identities that we play are similar to what an actor does when he is doing a role. And eventually, as we grow older, we become good actors. We are able to mold into different identities with different people. For example, if you meet a person, you are always trying to know the unknown, and you are making judgments. There are a lot of people who say that I, I don't want to judge you, or I don't judge anybody. This is a completely false thing, and what they are doing is basically lying to themselves and lying to others also, because your mind is based on judgment. You are always trying to know the unknown, and another person or another human being is always the unknown. You cannot uh, say that you are not judging them, because you are judging them and trying to know them inside. So you are trying to uh, take their actions, you are trying to take their words, and you are implementing them and building an identity that could be completely false, or that could be close to the person. Now, it is it is wrong to say that you are not judging them. In fact, you should be able to judge them very correctly. So, when you are developing an identity for yourself, you have to make this identity as close to the individuality that you have, and you need to project that identity with everyone. If you don't do this, then eventually people are going to see that you are playing a role. They are going to see your lies. Now, it is also important to be a good judge of character, and you can do this only when you are able to judge your own mind and you are able to see the patterns of your mind. Now, everybody has the same mind, that is, everybody is attracted to different things, but the pattern of your mind is very same. That is why psychology and philosophy is very relatable to each other, because the more you delve into them, the more you understand that this is exactly what I am like, or this is exactly what my mind thinks like. So now, this with this understanding, you are supposed to become a good judge of character. Now, judgment is going to always be the way to know another person, but as soon as you become a good judge of character, soon you will be able to be more empathetic with them and be actually be understanding to them. So it is not that you should be running away from judgment. You should embrace the judgment faculty that is there in your mind and develop it such that you become a very good judge of character, and you are able to perceive what other people are trying to say or what they are trying to project in a very deep and very broadened mind, you are able to then understand them and be empathetic with them. Now, we always are uh, projecting identities and we are perceiving identities. So, an identity that you perceive may not be the individual person. So, you may judge an identity, but you may not be able to actually see the individual unless and until you spend a long time with them. When you spend a long time with them, all these identities soon collapse, and the individuality that is there in the person is revealed. Now, what is this individuality? The individuality is the corest of all human beings. Now, what is an individuality? Is something that is when the the identity that you are when you are alone. When you are alone and when you are open, you are individual. You do things that you actually want and what you actually feel. You have dropped all identities. It is like when you are completely locked in a room and nobody is watching you. What do you do? That is your individuality. And to develop your self, to develop your ego, and to even develop your identities that you are projecting to the outer world, it is important to also develop your individuality. That is, to behave even when you are alone, you are to behave like the individual that you want to become. So this comes through awareness. Uh, this is why all of the scriptures say that God is watching you all the time, and that is how you develop a good and a better individuality. A person who is immoral in closed doors will eventually be seen as immoral, and the identity, this false morality, drops. Your immorality comes out eventually. So, even when you are alone, if you are able to be a moral person, then you are going to also project identities that are based on good morality. So these two words are very important to be looked at, not just in spiritual advancement, but advancement in any area of your life. So individuality and identity. So now let us look at closely at how uh, you are growing your identities and growing in terms of desires. Now there must be some actions that you are doing that are based on metaphysical desire. If you are not aware of metaphysical desire, and I would highly recommend you read Rene Girard's mimetic theory, and there are many videos that you can uh, look up online on YouTube. I will link some of them uh, in the description box below, and you can get an outlook of what metaphysical desires are. And when you understand what a metaphysical desire is, that is the desire to be like someone. So, for example, a person will try to own a BMW even though he doesn't even know how to drive a car, or he doesn't have the the pleasure of feeling what a car driving that BMW feels, but he wants to own this BMW just to feel how a person who owns a BMW feels like. So this is important to understand because a lot of our desires are based on not what we have experienced or not what we truly desire, but they are based on our identities that are being formed, which are false completely, by the way. So these identities create these metaphysical desires, and now these metaphysical desires, when you understand them, you will start to drop them. You will start to see the actions that you are doing on a day-to-day basis that are actually relevant, that are giving you actual pleasure and joy, instead of doing those things that you want to be like. You are doing things that are actually pleasurable. to you and to your individual self, and not to be like someone. For example, a person who does not like studying at all is trying to study just because he wants to portray that he is intelligent, and uh, this creates an enormous misbalance in your life. A person who is very quiet is trying to portray himself as an extroverted person just because he wants to be like that person who is very extroverted and outgoing. Now, there are some things that you do when you are completely alone. For example, in my case, the the only way that I am completely happy by doing is when I meditate. So when I meditate, I am not portraying it to anybody. I'm not showing anybody that I am a meditator, that I am a saint, or that something. Uh, I am something more than what I am. But when I am meditating, I'm doing it only for the pleasure of it. That is the only act that can define my individuality. It is not to show someone, it is not to gain anything out of that act. And it could be different for you too. For you, it could be listening to music, for example. It could be listening to writing. It could be listening to podcasts. It could be something that is very close to your individuality. It could be talking. It could be going out and communicating, being gregarious. So all of these things that is close to your individuality, you should adopt. And the other things that are close, not close to your individuality, you should let go of them. And as soon as these identities are shifting and they are dropping, you become confident in your individuality. You become more and more. You don't have that uh, anxiety that you have to play a certain uh, identity when you are with someone. You don't have to play any identity, and you can be as you are in your individual self. So, the more you become close to this individual ego, and the more it crystallizes, the more you are confident in yourself, the more you are able to vocalize your opinions, you are able to be more open, you are able to be more communicative, and express your opinions in a manner that is freeing than in a manner that is blocking. Some things that we say are based on our identities and we don't really mean it. That is, our identities say those words, but we don't really mean those. And when we later recognize what we have said, we understand that this is completely a lie. This is completely something that I would not say, or my individual self would not say. Now, there are also other identities that we adopt. There are identities of victimhood, there are identities of masterhood, there are identities of based on your actions that you show to other people. There are identities of many different identities. There are identities that you play when you are with your spouse, when you play with your mother, with your father. And sometimes what happens is when you are not your individual self, when suppose for example your father is in front of your spouse, there is a miscommunication with both the identities. And now what happens is there is a dilemma and there is a conflict between these two identities. You are acting a different person with your father, and you are acting a completely different person with your spouse. And when your spouse sees this, when some that you are completely different from what you actually are projecting to her, she thinks that you are lying, and this leads to more and more conflicts. So all identities are based on lies. So identities that are close to individuality should be grasped on, and this individuality should be developed. So thank you for watching this video. These two words are very important: individuality and identity. And You can do this exercise. You can write down these two words and write uh, everything your individual says, and write everything, every identity that you ever play with your parents, with your brothers, with your sisters, and with your romantic partners. So thank you for watching this video.